Yeah, Madonna's mask has came off. He is forcing New York to bend the knee to Islam law. Y'all know what Islam law looks like. Y'all best wake up, cause New York City is gonna be a state of Islam. That means Islam meaning there'll be no cops. You can't say pledge allegiance. Churches will be all gone. The mosques, those temples you see people bowing on the rugs, that's what Islam law is. So I'm gonna share the video. Enjoy.
And on top of everything else, you know 100% after he gets into office, if we are ever unfortunate enough for that to happen, he is going to pull a Sadiq Khan, where you run as his progressive. This absolute person who's not all that concerned with religion and whatnot, but then once you get into office, you start bitching and moaning about Islamophobia all over the place. This is the pattern that we see from these types of progressive candidates that also happen to be Muslim, even though they downplay their religious affiliation prior to getting into office, but as soon as they're there, that becomes the key component of their identity.
6 years ago, shortly after I had announced I was running for assembly, a well-meaning Muslim uncle pulled me aside. He smiled softly and looked at me with care. In a quiet voice, he told me I did not have to tell people I was Muslim. His eyes kind, his beard proud, and his face heavy with the implication of the unsaid.
All I have to say to you guys out there in the audience is that I 100% called it, predicted it, basically wrote the script for this moment for Zohran Mamdani, because I said very early on during this mayoral campaign that this guy was going to pull a Sadiq Khan, basically run as the most left-wing progressive guy for as long as he can, and then eventually, when he has the race pretty much locked down, which make no mistake about it, with early voting already happening right now, he's going to win the race for New York City mayor. It would switch up and everything would be about Islam and your Islamophobia, and how the real issues that the city of New York is facing is the fact that we don't treat Muslims very good. And of course, Zohran Mamdani ended up taking it a step further, making the case that Muslims, and we're not talking about Muslims that were in the Twin Towers, but Muslims in general, were the real victims of the September 11th attacks because of all the evil white racism that crawled up out of every rock in order to condemn them, because how dare you ever say anything about Islam when the topic is Islamic terror. But yeah, this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to break down this whole entire speech, the lies that he's already been caught in. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Oh, give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
Meaning Muslim uncle pulled me aside. He smiled softly and looked at me with care. In a quiet voice, he told me I did not have to tell people I was Muslim. His eyes kind, his beard proud, and his face heavy with the implication of the unsaid. I had not learned the lesson that he had been taught, time and again. It is the lesson that safety could only be found in the shadows of our city. That it is in those shadows alone where Muslims could embrace the fullness of our own identities. And that if we are to emerge from them, then it is in those shadows where we must leave our faith. These are lessons that so many Muslim New Yorkers have been taught.
So if you spend any time around these topics on the internet.com, somebody in your comments will definitely 100% at some point bring up the taqiyya, which is a concept in Islam where Muslims are permitted to lie and conceal their faith in order to, not get persecuted or something of the sort. Now, oftentimes when people leave these comments, what they're actually saying is that Muslims are lying in order to appear that they're assimilating into the countries that they're in until eventually they gain enough power in order to implement their agenda. So I do find it interesting that what Mamdani is describing right here is something that is put upon Muslims externally, even though, again, this is directly drawn from their faith. It is a tactic that they deploy, and again, in the best reading of this particular tactic, it is something that permits Muslims, in order to shield themselves, to avoid oppression from the majority group. But again, Mamdani's like, this is just a lesson that you have to learn in the city of New York, such an evil white racist place filled with evil white racism, because oh my god, it's been so terrible for Muslims post September 11th, which again should lead me to play this Norm Macdonald clip because it's absolutely timeless, fits perfectly right here, because this is essentially what Mamdani is saying.
I can't say my friend's name, but he said his biggest fear is that ISIS or some terrorist group like that would get a hold of a dirty bomb and explode it over a major city within the United States and kill tens of millions of people. Because then the blowback against innocent Muslims would be absolutely terrible.
Yes, that's right.
That's true.
Honestly, Norm, you're gone too soon. Your words of wisdom are absolutely as sage now as they were when you said them. And by the way, this is a ridiculous, absurd concept that we see play out time and time again. Every single time there is an Islamic terror attack in the United States of America or in the Western world, somehow we end up on the topic of, guess what? Islamophobia. Muslims most impacted. It doesn't matter who gets hurt, who gets killed, what stupid portion of their ideology ended up motivating that particular attack. The issue always becomes, the conversation always turns to the victimization of Muslims by backlash from the majority population after the fact.
These are lessons that so many Muslim New Yorkers have been taught.
I also reject this notion, by the way, that this is a lesson that so many Muslim New Yorkers have been taught. Again, a city that Mamdani immigrated to, he chose to become a citizen in this nation, even though, again, according to his own mother, he doesn't really consider himself an American, doesn't care about America. He considers himself more of a citizen of the world. But the idea that we have become so bigoted against Muslims in the United States of America, and in New York City in particular, is absurd in every possible way. And in fact, when you look at the polling data, what you ultimately end up discovering is that approval of Muslims actually went up after 9/11, not down. And the reason for this, and if you guys are old enough to remember the post 9/11 messaging, is that you had Republicans, specifically in the Bush administration, going out of their way to bend over backwards to talk about peaceful Muslims, a religion of peace, and how Muslims would be our greatest ally in the war on terror. This was the messaging, and guess what? It absolutely worked. So much so that the greatest attack on this nation in the history of our country, September 11th, which was perpetuated by Islamist terrorists, actually led to an increase in acceptance and approval of Muslims. In addition to that, people end up pulling up the hate crime incidents against Muslims in the United States of America, and what you ultimately end up realizing is that there are very few instances of this actually occurring. And in fact, Jewish Americans experience way more religiously motivated hate incidents, and I also want to point out that in the books for both of these numbers are reported instances, so when they turn out to be a hoax, a la the girl that said that her hijab was burned in the middle of Manhattan, who was actually afraid of her own father because she was staying out too late, those are counted in the group of reports. So even with the hoaxes, it is not that many crimes, and yet Mamdani is saying, oh my god, it's just so hard to be a Muslim in the city of New York. It's just so sad that after a crazy group of Muslims perpetuated a terror attack on this city, destroyed the Twin Towers, some of the most iconic buildings in the history of the city, on the darkest day in this country's history, or at least one of the darkest days, the acceptance of Muslims doubled in this city, doubled in this country, and that is just so sad. You white people, so bigoted. And by the way, this is what people find disgusting about these people who come to this country. They don't care about this nation. They want to rip down our statues, a la Mamdani saying that we should rip down the Christopher Columbus statue. They want to desecrate our culture, and then they call us bigots for not accepting them. Again, don't have any problem with Muslims. I've said on this channel time and time again that Americans are incredibly lucky in that the Muslim population that is here is one of the most chill Muslim populations across the entire world. And this is because in the United States of America, we have a concept of becoming an American, of welcoming people in. And by the way, Muslim migration went up through the roof post 9/11 due to the fact that, again, we were trying to emphasize more compassion, more love, and a separation between Islamic extremists and regular ordinary Muslims post 9/11. That has been the strategy in this nation all along, but Mamdani is pretending that it's not, and that he needs to lecture all of us about morality, which I find even more repugnant because this guy wrote an entire little piece about how he didn't want to intervene or join any organizations to fight sex crimes in Egypt, and the reason for that is because he felt like it was not good for a foreigner to be lecturing them about their society. So when it comes to sex crimes in Egypt, Mamdani has nothing something to say, but when he's in this foreign country, he wants to undermine every single one of our values here. Disgusting, repugnant, ridiculous, and again, the Sadiq Khan playbook through and through.
Again and again. And over these last few days, these are the lessons that have become the closing message of Andrew Cuomo, Curtis Sliwa, and Eric Adams. Yesterday, Andrew Cuomo laughed and agreed when a radio show host said that I would cheer another 9/11.
So look, that sounds awful, and if this was unprompted, it might even sound a bit bigoted, but the fact is, Zohran Mamdani is close allies with Cenk's nephew, somebody who said America deserved 9/11, and even though on the debate stage, he fake disavowed him when he was prompted by Governor Cuomo,
The Assemblyman will not denounce Hamas. The Assemblyman will not denounce Hassan Piker, who said America deserved 9/11.
And I find the comments that Hassan made on 9/11 to be objectionable and reprehensible.
he just did an event the other day, and guess who was invited to that particular event? Cenk's nephew. This is a sign of agreement. This is a sign that he's perfectly fine with him because now he has publicly come out against something that he said. He can't pretend that he's unaware of it, and yet he brought him in. So to me, not a stretch at all whatsoever that a guy who pals around with somebody who supports multiple designated terrorist organizations and believes that America deserved 9/11, and by the way, didn't really apologize for that. He just went on with his uncle and basically said English isn't his first language as his excuse, if you guys will remember.
But you understand now, and not just now, but you understood fairly soon after you said it, that saying Americans deserve 9/11 is a completely different statement and one that's wrong.
No, I didn't say Americans deserve 9/11. I said America deserves 9/11.
9/11, but that's
and
still
in that
wrong.
Moment, well, maybe you can chalk it up to English being my second language or whatever you want to chalk it up to.
So when you appear with that guy multiple times and invite him to your events and then complain that people start to think that maybe you're aligned with that individual, I don't give a damn about your hurt feelings over somebody laughing about it.
Yesterday, Eric Adams said that we can't let our city become Europe. He compared me to violent extremists, and he lied when he said that our movement seeks to burn churches and destroy communities.
Again, the problems in Europe are in fact real. What Mamdani's doing right here is trying to pin all criticism of him and of Muslims as Islamophobia, and that is exactly what they do in Europe in order to cover up rampant Islamic crime. So I got no problems with what Eric Adams said. Now, Mamdani has not explicitly said, as far as I know, that he wants to burn churches, but make no mistake about it, he has called for the removal of historical American monuments, the destruction of our culture. He probably wants to replace it with something else, and in reality, I think that is also a fair critique. Again, stand up to these people, because Islamophobia, as I believe Christopher Hitchens said, is a word used by fascists in order to control stupid people, and we are not playing along with Mamdani's game.
The day before that, Curtis Sliwa slandered me from a debate stage when he claimed that I supported global jihad.
So again, we have Mamdani pretending that he has no idea where any of this stuff is coming from. He's like, Curtis Sliwa slandered me on the debate stage by saying I support global jihad. And make no mistake about it, in the second debate, this 100% did occur. However, Curtis Sliwa was very likely referencing the fact that Zohran Mamdani refused to condemn calls to globalize the Intifada multiple different times, and he accidentally said jihad instead of Intifada. Again, Mamdani never addresses the substance of the issue. He's always dodging and deflecting, and in that regard, this is a perfectly reasonable statement to have. By the way, I will also point out that while Mamdani is pretending that, oh, there's just no rational basis to think that I support terrorism or anything of the sort, if you guys will recall the shooting of those 2 Israeli embassy workers in Washington, D.C., there was actually a post by the DSA that Zohran Mamdani is a dues-paying member to about how we need to free the shooter in that particular case, somebody who yelled "Free Palestine" after he executed those 2 individuals because they considered him to be a political prisoner. Can we talk about how Zohran Mamdani gives these people money? The people that, again, are calling somebody who committed a double murder at some Jewish event or Israeli event of 2 Israeli embassy workers in the United States of America a political prisoner? Or can we talk about that? Can we discuss that? Or is that Islamophobia as well?
And every day, Super PAC ads imply that I'm a terrorist or mock the way I eat.
Again, Mamdani pretends like this is just coming out of nowhere. The guy has gotten himself filmed multiple times digging his hands into rice and then shoving it into his face, getting spit all over his fingers, and then digging it right back into the rice. And I know some people have decided that they're going to play dumb, play stupid about this and say, oh, well, you eat burgers and pizza with your hands. You eat all sorts of designated finger foods with your hand. How is eating rice any different? And obviously, it is 100% different. It's absolutely disgusting. It's also unusual, and yes, you should be made fun of for doing weird and unusual and unsanitary things. Make no mistake about it. Also, I will point out that many Americans make the mistake of eating rice with a fork, and while a fork could work for rice, I mean, it's not exactly the best tool humanly possible, the fact is, the Southeast Asians have this 100% right. And no, they don't use chopsticks, they use spoons. Again, hang out with any Filipino, and what they end up having is a spoon in one hand and a fork in another hand, and that is because a spoon is an optimal device in order to use rice. Again, we here on the Actual Justice Warrior channel keep it real 100% of the time, unlike anyone else, and in reality, if another country is doing something better, if another culture is doing something superior to the United States of America, I'm not gonna lie to you guys about it, and facts are facts. A spoon, way better for eating rice than a fork, and definitely way better for eating rice than digging your nasty ass hands in there. And in addition to that, let's be 100% serious. Zohran Mamdani is a spoiled brat rich kid. There is no way in hell, in private, he's digging his dirty ass hands into his rice bowl in order to do that. Every single time he's done it for a photo op. And one of the funniest photo ops that he's done it for is this one where you see forks and whatnot in every single dish that is on the table while he's digging his hands in like it's a freaking claw into the rice. So again, while I don't think this is the most substantive issue, it is something that you should make fun of. It is unusual behavior, and of course, it is 100% performative, like everything this failed actor has done during the course of his campaign. And by the way, shame on the Republicans for not running a real candidate against Curtis Sliwa in the primary because they thought Andrew Cuomo was going to win, and shame on Andrew Cuomo for running one of the worst, laziest campaigns humanly possible. I've talked about from the jump how you have to go after Mamdani on policy, and none of these people do. None of these people talk about how his rent freeze and all this nonsense about affordable housing, which is going to be built by the government, and blocking private development will do the exact opposite. So we shouldn't be surprised that this guy is leading in the polls when people aren't challenging him on the substance of the issues. While this video is criticizing Mamdani for doing the Islamophobia thing, make no mistake about it, the fact that this guy is going to be the mayor of New York City is on the Republicans for not running a real candidate, expecting Cuomo to dominate the entire race, and Andrew Cuomo for being such a crap candidate.
Push polls that ask New Yorkers questions like whether they support invented proposals to make halal mandatory, or political cartoons that represent my candidacy as an airplane hurtling towards the World Trade Center.
Honestly, Zohran, shut up. Shut your stupid face. First and foremost, the plane was hurtling toward New York City. The fact that you thought it was the World Trade Center says a lot more about you than actually about the political cartoon. But again, political cartoons are meant to be harsh satire. So you had a communist red plane hurtling toward a building represented by the city of New York. Believe me, I've seen New York Post headlines and images that are way harsher than that. But of course, Zohran Mamdani is the ultimate victim, and Muslims, oh, so much indignity, so sad, and oh my god, he needs to speak directly to you guys, because you're really the victims of society, even though, again, Muslim approval went up after 9/11, not down.
But I do not want to use this moment to speak to them any further. I want to use this moment to speak to the Muslims of the city. I want to speak to the memory of my aunt, who stopped taking the subway after September 11th. Because she did not feel safe in her hijab.
So this claim right here has gotten a ton of attention, and the reason it's got a ton of attention is because it is an absolute lie, 100%. So first and foremost, Zohran Mamdani's aunt, people have figured out who this woman is. Notice in this image of her, she's not wearing a hijab, because guess what? Not all Muslims from all Islamic countries are actually required to do so, and do so because it is also a cultural practice that, again, is distinct to certain areas. I mean, we all seen photos before the Ayatollah took over Iran of Iranian women having their hair out, living quite peacefully, again, before the restrictions were put in order to force them into the hijab. But secondly, in addition to that, Zohran Mamdani's aunt was in Tunisia in the years before and the years after 9/11. So the idea that she just didn't feel comfortable, and Zoran has this heartbreaking memory of her refusing to take the subway because she thought she was going to be attacked in her job, is a lie. It's just fake. It's a false memory. The guy's an actor. He is a fraud. And again, what he's trying to do is paint New York City as horribly bigoted, when I will point out, once again, approval of Muslims went up, not down, after 9/11, and in addition to that, there are just not that many anti-Islamic hate crimes in any given year. But in New York City, that is also not true. This is why a bunch of these instances are people yelling things at other people, which again happens all the time. People in New York are known for having bad attitudes, but that cliche about New Yorkers coming together after a crisis, you seen it a lot in the Spider-Man movies that were Sam Raimi movies, is 100% true. A lot of people went out of their way to embrace the Muslim community and let people like Mamdani come to this country, become citizens in this country, just for him to knife us in the back, call us bigots, and you know what? I'm sick of the nonsense. I'm sick of the lie. Hey guys, editing Sean here, and I just want to give a shout out to Ryan Gerdusky, friend of the channel, because he predicted exactly what the media would do after Mamdani was caught in this lie. He said, quote, he's going to clear it up, saying, when I say my aunt, I mean a story I heard from my mom about someone she knew who was like an aunt to me, and the media is going to give him a pass out of cultural sensitivity towards third world ideas of extended families.
How will you respond? Recently addressed that Islamophobia, you reflected on the harassment she was facing post 9/11. Is that a blood relative?
Yes, I was speaking about my aunt. I was speaking about Zehra Fouhi, my father's cousin, who sadly passed away a few years ago. And for the takeaway from my more than 10-minute address about Islamophobia in this race and in this city to be the question of my aunt tells you everything about Andrew Cuomo and his inability to reckon with a crisis of his own.
And of course, you have Adam Carlson being an absolute dumbass saying, do white people really not know what an auntie is? Get it? Mamdani lied, and he's been caught lying about this kind of stuff over and over and over again, but in reality, it's not a lie. You're just a dumb white idiot who's a dumb white person who's so dumb and so white, and oh my god, you're just too white and dumb to understand how extended cultural families work.
Like whether they support invented proposals to make halal mandatory.
So I also want to point out that he's doing another thing that he wasn't really doing earlier on. This is something that Barack Obama did, where he would overpronounce these words, like, ethnicize them. It's like if you're ordering something that's Italian, you're like, give me the pizza, and give me the fagioli or whatever. Like, this is what he's doing right now in this particular moment, and it's just embarrassing. But again, this is actually standard fare for a Democrat to be like, I'm down with the culture, hola mi amigos, like you really emphasize it. You pronounce Texas like Tejas and New Mexico and all that nonsense. This is what's going on right here in the middle of this, and it just shows how goofy and unlegitimate it is. And again, I will remind you that Mamdani is an actor. Now, he's not an actor because of merit. He's an actor because his mother was a filmmaker and put him in movies. But what you're seeing right here is in fact acting, and we've seen it before. He does this and pulls this card when people start calling him out for his own bigoted statements, his own horrible statements. He starts talking about how, oh my god, what a struggle it is to be a Muslim in the city of New York. What a sad tale, and all this Islamophobia or Islamophobia that I experience in the United States of America. I don't even know what that accent was. I apologize for that. It's just so sad, and America's just a terrible country, and as his father said, America is actually basically like Nazi Germany. In fact, we made Nazi Germany, even though the United States of America are the people who defeated the Nazis. Make no mistake about it.
To be Muslim in New York is to expect indignity. But indignity does not make us distinct. There are many New Yorkers who face it. It is the tolerance of that indignity that does. Since I announced my candidacy for mayor 1 year ago yesterday, I've sought to be the candidate fighting for everyday New Yorkers, not simply the Muslim candidate. I've carried these indignities with me each moment of this race, doing so all the while as the first major Muslim candidate for mayor in New York City history. I thought that if I could build a campaign of universality, I could define myself as the leader I aspire to be, one representing every New Yorker, no matter their skin color or religion. I thought if I worked hard enough, it would allow me to be that leader. And I thought that if I behaved well enough or bit my tongue enough in the face of racist, baseless attacks, while returning back to my central message. It would allow me to be more than just my faith. I was wrong. No amount of redirection is ever enough.
Now again, this is a switch up right here. This is the Sadiq Khan coming to the United States of America to do the mean tweet segment, to talk about how we need to censor social media because there's so much bigotry in that you in the West get to speak freely. You have a First Amendment in the United States of America. You used to have somewhat of a culture of free speech in Europe, and now everybody has to crack down on behalf of the Muslims because they're the ultimate victims. He's talking about how, oh, if he just suffered the indignity of being in the city of New York, if he just endured all the struggles of being in this great country, terrible country, evil white racist country that he chose to become a citizen of, and then immediately won a state assembly seat right away, which, by the way, he doesn't even show up for half the votes for. Oh, if he just smiled enough, then that would be A-OK, first class all the way. But in reality, we knew the smiling mayor campaign was totally fake. Again, there are videos of him before he was running for mayor, screaming at ICE, trying to get into fights with people, making a disturbance, all the horrible things that he said and did as a member of the DSA. We've all seen that, and then we got the switch up to the smiling, I'm just progressive, I'm just like you, let me jump in the Hudson River to talk about freezing your rent. But in reality, this is him coming out and saying, it's going to be about Islam. If you come after me, I'm going to call you Islamophobic, and this is standard fare for Muslims in the West. This is the Sadiq Khan playbook. Make no mistake about it. And yes, it's shameful and ridiculous. And by the way, there's a lot of people who say, oh, Mamdani's just as American as anyone else. No, he's not. He's absolutely not. He's been an American citizen for 10 minutes, so legally he has all the rights of an American citizen. Make no mistake about it. I would never deny him any of that. But the guy